my lovely LEGO addicts, lovely to see you all here. Today I wanted to talk about another old build that I've achieved in this short amount of time. I know, I am on a roll. If you have not watched my last video, please do go check it out. I'll leave a link somewhere in this vicinity. Anyway, so as you can see, I've got it right next to me. It is the Versteinert old build of the Boutique Hotel. Now, obviously, you know that I bought this set from a viewer, and I was super excited to build the old build for it. I want to talk about this old build in a few different categories. First of all, I want to talk about the build experience, then I want to talk about the techniques, and then I want to talk about basically just what I thought of it. Before we go into all those categories though, there are some stats we need to share. So first of all, obviously this is the old build of the Boutique Hotel. Yes, I know it's kind of mind-blowing. It does not look like the Boutique Hotel at all. This is mostly because it hides the light nougat, which is such an iconic colour for the Boutique Hotel. It is in here. There it is. You do need these parts to actually build another building, but they are very much a secondary colour in this build, which is exciting. So this build uses 2,703 parts of the original 3,068 parts. So like that's 350 less than you get in the set, which I think is a really impressive amount. I really like when a old build kind of really uses the parts available and really just tries to completely reinvent the set, which to my mind is still witchcraft, because where even do you start? The other stat is the instructions to build this were €14.99, or roughly like £12.80 or $16 if you do the conversion right now. Depends a little bit how you pay. I personally think that's kind of on the low end for old build instructions, especially for such a big building and for such a popular set, because if you've ever looked into old builds, then you'll know that doing old builds of modulars is the most popular thing to do. So for $14.99, I think that's really good. You know that the instructions for the Natural History Museum old build were about €10 more expensive, and therefore were a little bit like on the top end of my comfort scale, but they were really good. So I feel like that is kind of at the top end. This is like more at the lower end of my expectations for what I'm paying for old build instructions. Really, to me, having done various old build and remocks in the past, I really think paying a little bit more makes me feel like the designer, whoever made this, has really put in the effort to make sure that the build is going to be like of a good quality, that the instructions are going to be clear, and that it's all going to work, or pretty much all going to work, because sometimes, you know, there's error with the builder. The instructions are super high quality, they're super clear, they're basically just like LEGO instructions. There's even occasionally when you're doing something slightly more out there, there's like a little written note to tell you exactly how to do it, just to make sure it's really going to work. I had zero issues with this build, which I think is super impressive. I will touch upon this again later, but also this was a slightly more like straightforward build to possibly the corner garage that I've done previously, and also the natural history old build. But overall, this was very, very good instructions. I thought they were really well done. Now then, after all of those stats, let's go into the build experience. So first of all, this is very much a category where I'm going to be like, do as I say, not as I do, because I would say if you want to have a good experience building old build, you want to basically just open up all the bags, have sorted big parts and sorted small parts, and the easiest way to do it is sorted by colour and also by part type. Like split it all out, and if you can do it by colour, that's even easier. So having those categories in every colour means that you can super quickly find things. With this building especially, because when you look at the instructions for this build in particular, if you look at the colours of the tan and the light nougat, they are very similar. So having said that, I didn't do that. I just split it out, sort of like small elements, large elements, some plates, some big plates, some bricks, and then some like doors and windows and stuff. That was basically my my 6 categories that I had. Did it mean that it took way longer? Oh, absolutely, yes, it took forever. Basically, if you want it to take longer, don't sort your parts. You're gonna spend a lot of time finding specific elements, because going through 3,000 or so parts to find one particular one that you're after, like the open 1x1 stud, it's going to take you a while, so maybe sort it. The build experience for me as well, because this is an old build, is just sort of better than a remodel for me, because to me, getting all the parts for a remodel is such a drag. I don't think we talk about it that often, but if you want to do a remodel, which looks beautiful, the process of ordering all the parts, unless you have like 300, 400 pounds to just throw at a remodel, you're gonna have to just go slowly over time to buy all the bricks for it, and it takes so long. So the old builds are such like a wonderful way to get into building something that you haven't designed but that you're just following instructions for that aren't Legos. They are just beginner friendly and really quick and satisfying. It's time for the techniques, because that is really important. I've talked about this in my previous video when I was reviewing the old build of the Natural History Museum. However, in my opinion, it's very important that an old build looks nothing like the build that it's using the parts from. It just, to me, there's a sign of a good old build. There were 3 old builds for Brickative that I was considering. The first one was this one, obviously. The other one was the Brickative one. And the third one was Steinekonig's as well, actually. And though I really like both of the other ones had enough issues that I didn't love them enough to build them. Mostly, I think, because they used the light nougat in a more like prominent position, and I can't help it, but I just don't really like that colour. I find it really hard to blend in. But having said that, I do actually really love the Boutique Hotel, so balance with the Boutique Hotel, but that colour just works, in my opinion, for me. I know that was a controversial colour, like, even when it came out. This one did a really good job with just small details that were really thought out. I thought the interior builds still were really pretty. Because this is a shop, the antique shop obviously, it kind of feels like it had to be, because otherwise it's not really a shop. If those builds were subpar, I feel like they would have really fallen short. But they were really good, and I really liked it. It did get a little bit like more improvisational towards the top. I have to say the apartment at the top floor is a little bit interesting and not my favourite, very similar to the old build of the Natural History Museum, but I did really enjoy building this. And actually, it was very solid throughout, but my favourite part of the technique in this building was this roof right here. It's like a sort of additional thing that you add on later. Let me see if I can. And this technique to create a detail here is just so fantastic. It uses hinge plates for extra detail, and I just really enjoyed building that, and I thought it really finished off the roof. This one is a little bit more similar to an actual Lego set, but there's just a lot of brick stacking. There isn't that many like sideways building to make things work techniques. However, in a way, that still makes it a really nice build, because you don't have to like go, how is it even attached? Like, what am I doing wrong? It's not working, because it's all just pretty straightforward. The roofs are probably the most interesting part to me, because they were just done in a most creative manner, and some of the interior builds are really creative. Now, this is the same designer that did the pub old build for the corner garage, and that did use a lot of really different techniques. So I do know that this designer can do really creative techniques, so this is not at all slamming his building skill. The fact that he even designed this building based off like the Boutique Hotel is crazy to me. Right, time for my opinions. I feel like I've sprinkled them in already a little bit, but there's a few things that I noticed about this build that I would like to change if I could. I'm not sure if I'm going to be really honest with you, but what I would really have liked to have seen is these 2 buildings are the same height, and I really feel like it would have felt nicer if one of the 2 was higher. I don't think it needs to be higher than what it is currently, because it's already a pretty tall building. If one of the 2 was maybe just slightly lower than the other one, I feel like that would have just made it look a little bit more fun to add to my city. But I don't know if that's just me, because that is a type of city that I have with lots of different levels of buildings, so to me that looks nicer. However, if you have a really densely populated city with a lot of very similar square buildings, this would blend in really nicely, because it does have very distinct styles of building, which I do really love. The other slight thing that I didn't quite love or feel like is slightly lacking, I don't know, that's even too strong a term. I really feel like this antique shop could do with a more obvious sign above the door. Now obviously I wouldn't really know how to do that. There is possibly an opportunity to possibly add a sign here on the roof, but I feel like it's quite dark and not very, it doesn't really jump out at me. I wish there was some sort of gold sign. There is technically a sign for the antique store, which is right here, but it's kind of off to the side, and because there's a really big balcony detail here, it doesn't really like catch your attention as much. So yeah, I really wish there was like an antique store. Really, I just want a sticker, but obviously like that's not possible with this set as an old build. That is probably my only complaint, because they have a really nice, very brilliantly built like suitcase sign here above the travel shop. And that brings me perfectly to the travel shop. Now, the travel agent, I think, was brilliant. This set obviously comes with the palm tree leaves, and there are so many in the set, and I think Versteinert used them just brilliantly in order to capture the vibe of a travel agent. The only funny thing is, like, Ben's family visited as I was building this, and his dad saw this and he was like, oh, is that like a Dutch coffee shop? And I was like, no, it's a travel agent, but I see what you mean. So that was kind of funny to me, but I genuinely think that the use of these leaves as sort of palm leaves and an advertisement for the travel agent is brilliant, and I'm really glad that he's used those elements because I feel like those are the more specific, difficult elements to use. There was a few sort of like illegal techniques, but overall not that bad. He really limited himself with those techniques. But the way that you attach this like balcony thing is technically not quite legal, but it is really effective, and though it was a little bit tricky to figure out, because there's written instructions, it was fine, and I think it looks lovely. Overall, I think the effect of this build is really good. Had I sorted my bricks, I probably would have had a slightly better experience, but that's completely on me. I really did enjoy getting a building finished, and you get modular withdrawal symptoms because obviously LEGO only releases one a year, and this really just scratched that itch. I think it's just so gorgeous. I may in the future change a few colours, but overall I think this has really good European vibes and it really suits my city. I do have to kind of think about where I'm going to place it, but I'm going to only think about that after I've lit it up because this needs lights in my opinion, and it doesn't right now, so stay tuned to see me add lights in the future because I'm going to have two old builds that I still need to light up. And I will be back on this channel with more reviews and more builds and city updates. But do give me a moment because at the moment I am out of projects because I have to go and find some money to buy more bricks for the remodels I'm working on, which are taking forever. Genuinely forever. Alright, if you like this building and you would like to try an all build for yourself, there are some really brilliant ones out there. This is obviously one of my favourites, but my favourite probably still is, and by the same designer, the corner pub, like the pub based on the corner garage, because I think it was my first old build, so I kind of had low expectations anyway, but that was such a brilliant thing, and I keep looking at it still to this day and think it looks beautiful, so do very much check that out. This one is brilliant. There is obviously a Natural History Museum old build that I've just done, and there's a few more I've done over the years that I may not have in my city anymore, but were really fun builds. So if you are looking for sort of like scratching that modular build itch without having to like save up to buy all these individual elements, which adds up very quickly, definitely have a check out of the old builds. They are just so brilliant. Thank you so very much for being here. Have a lovely rest of your day. I hope I could help you with this review, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye! Hello!